you love Italian-American pizza, but have always wondered what traditional Neapolitan pizza from Italy is like? Well, you're in luck. Today we're making pizza Napoletana. Our recipe for today comes from my good friend who is from Italy and loves to cook. The entire ingredient list is here, so you can pause it and take a screenshot to save for later. For the toppings, we use speck, which is an Italian smoked ham, really similar to prosciutto, but even better in my opinion. Mortadella, which is a pork sausage with pistachios, also Italian. Artichokes, capers, shiitake mushrooms, balsamic glaze, and freshly grated Parmesan cheese, but you can use any toppings that sound good to you. Starting off on day one, the dough. You're going to start by adding 300 grams of flour to a large bowl. Add the yeast and dry malt powder. Add 300 milliliters of warm water. You don't want it to be hot, but you want it to be warm so it can wake up the yeast. And mix it all together either by hand or with an electric mixer, as we have here. And just make sure you scrape down the bowl as necessary to incorporate all the ingredients evenly. Doing so is really going to ensure that the dough is mixed well and can develop really well overnight. Continue mixing until everything is thoroughly combined. You may have to scrape down the bowl more than one time. Once it's all thoroughly combined, cover with plastic wrap and let it rest at room temperature for 1 hour and then put it in the fridge to develop overnight. On day 2, you're going to continue working on the dough. Take it out from the fridge and let it come to room temperature for about 2 hours. And then you're going to add to the dough and mix it all in the remaining 1.25 kilograms of flour. It's a lot of flour, so be warned. 700 grams of water, doesn't matter what temperature, but nothing too extreme, and a teaspoon of salt. And make sure to add the salt after you've added the flour and the water and kind of given it an initial mix. And once you've mixed all of that in the bowl, take the dough out of the bowl and onto a floured kitchen surface and begin kneading the dough for about 5 to 10 minutes, roughly, just to develop more gluten. And once you've given it a nice knead, put it all back into the bowl. Gonna cover it up once again and let it rise for at least 2 hours before putting it back into the fridge overnight. 2 hours later, it's nice and bubbly and puffed up, and you're gonna put it back in the fridge overnight. It's day 3 and time to finally bake our pizzas. The next morning, you're going to take out the dough and let it come to room temperature for 2 hours, preferably this time in a place with no drafts like the oven, but make sure it's turned off. Once it's nice and risen, take it all out of the bowl and put it onto a floured kitchen counter. Use a sharp knife or a bread cutter like you have to cut the dough up into 6 different buns. And line the buns with parchment paper, place them all in a baking tray, pretty spread apart so they have enough room to rise. Cover them with plastic wrap and let them rest and rise in a draft-free place for 3 hours. Now it's time to preheat the oven to 550 and take out all of your toppings. Make sure you drain your mozzarella beforehand with a cheesecloth and shred it up. And for the sauce, use about half of your can of crushed tomatoes. Add the half teaspoon of sugar and oregano, salt, and olive oil to taste. you're going to prep and bake each pizza one by one. So start with one of the buns and just work it onto a piece of parchment paper on your baking tray. And we're going to use semola flour for crunch, so make sure you put that on the pizza dough as you're rolling it into its round. Right before baking each, spread a light layer of the tomato sauce, add the shredded mozzarella, and your toppings of choice. And bake each pizza for 6 to 8 minutes at 550. And there you have it, Italian style pizza. La fine.